All right, we are live with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. And I want to thank everybody who's reached out to me in the past couple of days via Twitter DMs or other sources. I am in Tampa for those of you that know and kind of follow me through there. And everything with the hurricane kind of hit a little bit south of me.
Tampa for those of you
I
that know and
just
kind of
had
follow me through there. And
I just had a like a tree branch or something like kind of fall in my driveway. Getting some people to kind of come and help me get that out of the way. But other than that, no damage and everything's good. So prayers up to those affected. And yeah, there's some donation links going around. I'll actually put those in the show notes as well. If you have anything to donate to anybody that is affected in the hurricane, I know we're all praying for South Florida. Thank you all for the kind messages, and I'm okay, and I'm here still putting out content. I got a great show, and I also want to thank everybody that's listened on Podcasting 2.0 apps. So, I usually like to read a lot of the fountain boosts, and I've gotten a lot of boosts, but nobody really wrote too many notes this week. So I had one user just write, "Go ahead" from the last State of Bitcoin with Jaime about reelecting or potentially reelecting Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. So if you haven't given that a listen, please do. But I got a very special guest today. I got D at Hodl D from CoinKite. D, how you doing today?
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me. Yep, as you said, Hodl D. You can find me on Twitter, and I work for CoinKite. We do some Bitcoin stuff. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's bring it back. Why don't you give us a little bit of your orange pill story and kind of how you got started in the Bitcoin world?
Sure. Yeah, I was actually on Gary's show from BitBlock Boom the other week, and he was, he's the Bitcoin boomer, right? And a lot of boomers tend to get scammed, and I was the same. So my intro was basically, I was on Telegram. Some guy was, I was doing some Forex trading. I wanted to get into trading, day trading, stuff like that, and some guy was like, "Hey, give me a Bitcoin, I'll give you 2 Bitcoin, kind of thing, right?" And it was like a small amount, and I was like, "Whoa, I just doubled my money." He's like, "All right, now give me more money," and then obviously that was when he took lots of money from me. So, realized how immutable Bitcoin was super early in my career because couldn't get it back. So yeah, that was kind of my intro, and then started diving down that rabbit hole a little more, and joined Bitcoin Twitter and got a little bit more of a presence there. And yeah, so now I'm working for CoinKite. We're a Bitcoin only hardware company. We sell lots of things as well as our cold card. We sell the block clock. We got a micro block clock coming out about now. We have some new cards that we're selling. That's basically like a hardware wallet in your wallet. Instead of having like a expensive device, you can have a card that literally stores all your Bitcoin for you. We sell open dime, Sats cards, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And that's funny that you got scammed. I actually I don't think I've really told this story publicly because I just got reminded of it like the other week or two ago. But I was trying to buy tickets to a concert, and somebody tried to get me to send them Bitcoin. Or I don't think it was Bitcoin. I think it was like an Amazon gift card or something. But like the email address was like Bitcoin Princess or something like that at email.com. So that was like back when I was in high school. So that was like before 2012 or something. So
Wow.
I'm sure that that lady who was scamming some people ended up making it off pretty good.
She's probably a millionaire now. My God.
Yeah, exactly. All from scamming. But
Yep.
yeah. So I guess you had a speech at at BitBlock Boom, and you've kind of gotten ingrained into the Bitcoin space. And the thing I really like about CoinKite is that you guys really help people hold their own keys. And I think right now is I mean, maybe not as much in the news as maybe a few months ago when a lot of these exchanges were stopping withdrawals. But how's your experience been interacting with Bitcoiners and kind of encouraging them to hold their own keys? Do you kind of feel that since everything has kind of stopped withdrawals and you've seen the Celsius and like the Voyager kind of drama and things kind of start to unfold, has it made it a little bit easier of a selling point to be like, hey, hold your own keys and you don't really need to explain the importance behind it? Or are you kind of seeing like, still some of the similar mental hurdles to get over?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we've definitely seen a lot more sales because of these, news articles and stuff coming out that, hey, like this company just kind of rugged everyone and left. But no, education is definitely key, right? Even now, I still find that people still love to use Coinbase and they love to use custodial services because they think it's more, easy and convenient. But with a 5-minute YouTube tutorial, you can learn how to literally hold your own keys and not have to worry about that, right? It's just like eliminating that risk. It's like, why would I want to have counterparty risk if I don't have to, right? But yeah, I think a lot of people still struggle with that, and I think that's going to be a long battle that we're gonna fight over the years because we just haven't seen the full effects of what it means to have all these companies go bankrupt, right? Some might not. But I think the whole paper Bitcoin versus real Bitcoin kind of argument is going to be a long drawn out one, just because people don't realize how many IOU Bitcoins there are on exchanges, and it's guaranteed more than 21 million. So yeah, I don't know when that catalyst will happen, but I think people even now with like I said, with Celsius and other companies going bankrupt, they do realize it. It just takes some time and some education for sure.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that you kind of brought up that hurdle, right? Because I mean, I think like for Bitcoin to really succeed, there might be something like that, where it's you have a bank account similarly to what you have on your phone right now, where you can access your Bitcoin and you have that as your, I guess, spending Bitcoin, but then your savings account is more like in the cold card or in cold storage or whatever. So have
Right.
you kind of like gotten to that point where that's how you're trying to explain it, where if you're transacting or moving Bitcoin around, or is it still just like people just want to be able to see how much they have and it's just easily pulling up a website or a phone app or something like that in order to kind of see how much they actually have?
Yeah, good question. I think, like even in my workshop at BitBlock Boom, there, I kind of did what you were saying, right? You have your hot wallet, which is like your checking account or your walking around money, spare change in your pocket, and then you have your vault, right? Your cold card, your cold storage device, fully offline, stuff like that. So that's the way that we kind of educate people and kind of teach them. But yeah, I mean, it just takes a while for people to realize, right? It's a few touches, right? Even with us, maybe with you learned about Bitcoin in 2012, but it took a 5, 6, 7 touches for you to realize, oh, you know what, I should get some of this Bitcoin stuff, or oh, you know what, maybe I should put some of this in cold storage. But yeah, no, I think people like phones, they like the convenience, they want to just check it on their phone, they want to see how much they have. So I get that part. So that's why, like, even with our tap signer, like I said, it's like a card instead of a hardware wallet. That could be like a semi-cold wallet where it's like a two-factor authentication. So instead of having your hot wallet on your phone that you can spend money right away without any authenticator, you can use this card and say, I want to send this amount of Bitcoin to said person. Okay, in order to send the Bitcoin, you need to tap your card. You need to tap your card, put in your PIN, and then you can send those funds. So just trying to bridge that gap between convenience and security is definitely a tricky one, but it's only 13 years old, so we're going to keep innovating and making better products, and get people to where they need to be, where they're not getting rugged.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's a lot of, people building around this space. And I think it's going to get a little bit more convenient. But, on the note of me, I guess hearing about Bitcoin in 2012 doesn't necessarily mean I was smart enough to buy any then. Granted, I was
Right,
not
right.
just in high school. So, maybe if I looking back, I guess everybody wishes that, right? They bought
Oh,
Bitcoin,
of course,
but,
of course.
um,
Everyone takes a few touches, right? It's not as soon as you hear Bitcoin, you're all in Bitcoin, right? I mean, I heard of Bitcoin many years ago, just like yourself in high school. Saw some YouTube video of some guy doing some mining in his garage, and I'm like, what's this guy doing? Like, what the heck? Like, okay, and then like 4 or 5 years later, I'm like, damn it! Like, why did I do this?
yeah,
So
exactly. And
everyone's got
it
their
seems
journey.
Yeah, and it seems like more people are kind of getting in on Bitcoin right now. And so for you that are like working in the space, are you seeing a lot more newbies even come in, even with this, I guess, we could call it a bear market at this point where, you saw it in the news. We're not seeing a lot of people FOMO in now. It seems like, at least for me, anecdotally, it seems like a lot of people are kind of steadily getting into the space. Are you kind of
Mhm.
seeing the same thing over at CoinKite?
Yeah, good question. I'm the support guy, so I get all the emails. There's no dumb questions. There's plenty of beginner questions, plenty of advanced questions. But yeah, I have seen a lot more beginner questions. Kind of, just talking about like how to use the product itself, or how to transfer some Bitcoin from an exchange to the wallet. Just very simple things, which is not an issue, right? I love helping everyone, so it's I encourage those questions. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of more people getting in the space. Everyone was talking to their grandma and their family and the relatives like last year, saying, "I'm buying Bitcoin, I'm going all in," and then yeah, that maybe didn't turn out the way that we hoped. I'm a little bit of a bear when it comes to Bitcoin, maybe just because I'm greedy. I just want lower Bitcoin. I definitely think we're in a bear market. But in terms of your question, I think there's a lot of people coming in and discovering it, and the fact that it is 70% off right now does entice people, and people realize, well, if it's 70% off, if it goes back up, I'm going to get a lot of gains, right? I think it's a benefit for Bitcoin, and it's a benefit for me because I get more Sats per dollar. But yeah, the more people, the better.
Yeah, and it seems like it's funny because it seems like everybody around that's investing, it seems like the only people that are kind of happy that the prices are depressed are Bitcoiners, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, all right, my stock portfolio is down a shit ton, real estate's down a ton, whatever else you're investing in, shit coins are down a bunch, and
Mm.
people are kind of, hating everything that's going on, really worried about the global economy. But many Bitcoiners like me and you are like, hey, cheaper sats, so why don't we just keep on stacking? So I think, that's like the beauty of Bitcoin is it's taught a lot of people, longer time horizon. And
Mm.
so, I guess being a support guy, do you kind of I guess get a lot of those questions where it's like more like, all right, they're starting to freak out when they see the price drop down dramatically, or they're seeing some of these swings. And, yeah, as somebody who's working at a company that encourages cold storage, are you seeing people kind of scramble like, all right, how do I get these, my sats back onto, say, a hot wallet to sell or something like that? Or are you seeing for the most part people still kind of, I guess, stacking and hodling on and through this bear market?
Yeah, I think we saw a lot more people freaking out when the whole Three Arrows, Celsius, like kind of that month. I think in the beginning of the summer there, that kind of I feel like really freaked people out, and it might have been, um, yeah, a nice boost in sales for sure. But now I don't see people, really saying, "Oh, I want to sell it. Like, how do I transfer it off here?" Like I said, we still get pretty beginner questions and how to transfer on and off and whatnot. And a lot of people get confused when they're using, say, Spectre or Sparrow, and they're like, "I see the funds on Sparrow, but I don't see them on my cold card." And it's like, well, the funds that are on Sparrow that you're seeing is what's on your cold card. The cold card's a fully offline device. It doesn't know how much Bitcoin's in each address, right? Stuff like that. But for the most part, yeah, just bear market's going to be bear markets, and pretty average questions. But again, there's no dumb questions, right? This is the best time to learn, best time to buy. It's at an extreme discount, even for a bear like myself. I'm a bear, but I'm buying here too, right? I'm not waiting for 10K or whatever, but I'll buy it if it gets there.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it too, is like timing any kind of market, whether it's stocks or whatever. I mean, it's always hindsight looks 2020. You could have bought, during one time and gotten exponentially more and all this and that. But I think at the end of the day, the best way for me, and I guess just like mentally, just going through the stresses of the swings and everything, especially at the beginning, was
Hmm.
just DCA in and just chill and just keep going back to the fundamentals and understand why you got into Bitcoin.
That's
Um,
right. That's the
and
name of
that,
the game.
yeah, exactly. And that brings me to our first story. So we're going to start going into some of the current event stories now.
Sure.
And the first one I'm going to start off with is the CEO of Celsius Network, Alex Mashinsky, has resigned. So he's been very controversial. A lot of his clips and previous interviews have come up, and Celsius was essentially the first exchange that kind of shut off withdrawals. But now it's rumored that there's a $2.85 billion gap in Celsius's balance sheet. And Mashinsky said in a in the press release that him being the CEO has become a distraction. And he believes his resignation will help the progress of the bankruptcy and Celsius to kind of claw its way out. So, what do you think of like all these products and services? Not just exchanges, but a lot of these yield services. I feel like a lot of newbies would kind of try to get in and go to a company like Celsius or some of these other companies that offer these extreme yields and say like, hey, instead of buying DCAing in, I'm going to get this company to essentially give me more Bitcoin for free, like a bank account is what they say, right? The banks are
Right.
evil, but these nice companies are great. So, how do you view overall just, these exchanges and these yield services?
Yeah, that's a big question to answer. I'll try my best. Obviously, I am no guru, so this is just my opinion. I don't know all the facts, but I think they're all scammers. Just to start off, if someone's offering you a 20% yield, aka anchor, and you don't know where that yield's coming from, obviously you're the yield, right? I mean, it's that simple. And people were like screaming about this for months, if not like since like last year. They're like, listen, like this is not sustainable. If they're giving you this incredibly high yield, again, you are the yield, right? You're basically paying off earlier investors by getting more money and more money and more money. And once the liquidity that's coming in is all dried up, then you're toast, right? I mean, then your UST stable coin gets unanchored, and you're screwed, right? People lost billions of dollars. So yeah, I really don't like them, and I think there's just so many red flags, so many warning signs, and I just feel like a lot of people are just being taken advantage of, right? People on Spaces are really pushing these things. I mean, Rug Paul, was shilling this stuff. So many people were obviously paid to shill this stuff, and they just got screwed, right? It's a tale as old as time. And there's so many of these pump and dumps, whether it's like a pump and dump coin or if it's a pump and dump company that's offering you a high yield. That's not really sustainable. So the whole Alex Mashinsky thing is hilarious because I remember listening on to Twitter Spaces. I think maybe a week after they put on huddle mode or hodl mode. And he's like, everything's fine, guys. Don't worry about it. It's all good. We got so much new stuff in the pipeline this year. And then and then the next week after that, it was like, yep, they're filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy or whatever it was. And Alex is like, no one knows where he is and yada, yada. So, yeah, I just think a lot of people are full of shit. And yeah, it's tricky sometimes because they pry on the weak, and they'll go on these Twitter Spaces, they'll get thousands of people in there, shill their shit. Someone will come up on stage saying, what is the risks, and then they'll boot you off stage and say there are no risks, it's all hunky dory and nothing's gonna go wrong. What are you talking about? As people are literally like screaming, get out, get out, get out, get out. So thankfully some people did get out. I saw a few people on Twitter saying thank you to the people that kind of were screaming the red flags. I don't need to comment on their names, but thank you, blah blah blah, for telling me to get out of Celsius. I just got out like a week before they froze everything, blah blah blah. So it's unfortunate though, because it'll be turned and they'll be like, well, this is FUD. People are just trying to short our token and blah blah blah. It's like, I mean, maybe, sure, that might be a little bit, but also your whole company is a Ponzi. It's so we're just calling it like we see it. After we've seen after these past few months that all those red flags that people were talking about were not FUD, and indeed were real. and they're paying for it. So it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like, I I don't know if Bitcoin maxis on Twitter are like extremely happy that they were right, because of course some people get affected. Of course you're seeing big names, I guess is what you could call them, like crypto
Sure.
CEOs falling, like Mashinsky and other things like that. But you know, I, I guess like how do we help? Like, I mean, I feel like these products are always going to come up in the crypto space, right? There's always going to be somebody else creating some other shit coin. There's always going to be somebody else trying to offer some product that they claim is better. There's always going to be somebody else that kind of helps, you know, feed into that human greed of people just wanting more and more and more. So how do we as Bitcoiners like kind of avoid like orange pilling new people and avoid them I guess avoid orange pilling new people and bringing them in and then them all of a sudden going into the shit coinery and trying to chase some of these yields? Like how have you explained like, hey, this is a Ponzi or this isn't sustainable? Like how are you kind of getting around that when you're trying to bring on new people into Bitcoin?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's trial by fire, and that's the best way people learn. That's the best way I learned. um, and I think people learn at their own pace, and if you can learn faster than others, then that will benefit you. If you don't, then you're going to get burned, and you're going to learn your lesson eventually, right? Same with the whole rehypothecation Bitcoin stuff, right? There's more IOU Bitcoin than there are Bitcoin. And eventually, there's going to be a margin call, and people are going to want their coins, and they're going to say, sorry, we don't have enough. So, yeah, it's a tale as old as time. There's going to be scammers everywhere. And I just think education is always key. And there's only so much you can do, right? I mean, I'm not you, you're not me. I can try and tell you what I've learned, but until you kind of go through it yourself and learn, and maybe you lose a few bucks in the process, then you're just not there yet, I guess. I don't know, right? It's because you could go at, like, obviously Bitcoin maxis on Twitter have a very loud voice. Some are definitely a little different than others. I hope people don't put Bitcoiners in a box because of those people, but they can yell at the top of the rooftops and say this is a total scam, and then there's going to be 5 other crypto bros on the same call saying no, it's not. Look at our Ponzi-nomics. They're all good, and you're like, no, they're not. But I guess I'll see you in a year when I can say I told you so. But yeah, for the I told you so stuff, obviously it does obviously feel good to be right, but you're of course right. People are gonna get burned. People are gonna lose money, and it's not a fun process, and it's not really like something I would laugh at, but it's something that I would hope people learn from, and that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, and I think I saw a lot of tweets going around that the bear market has created a lot of Bitcoin maxis. Granted, I don't know if that was just bots or people kind of feeding into it or what, but I
Right.
think that was like kind of the general narrative that I was seeing. And a big part of that too was like the Luna scam, right? So that kind of brings me to the next story, right, where we have Interpol is issued a red notice for Do Kwon, who is the co-founder of the Terraform Labs, I believe is
Hmm.
how you say it. But anyway, they created the Luna shitcoin and USDT, all that kind of stuff. So, um, you know, it's interesting because he's claiming to not be on the run right now, but and he's claimed to be in Singapore, but Singapore has claimed that he's not in the nation state and his location is unknown. So I mean, just like you kind of said, right? Like Mashinsky, like nobody really knew where he kind of was for a little bit. There was rumors he was trying to flee the country. And it seems like when the going gets tough, like a lot of these guys, they just go on the run, right? Or find
Right.
ways to kind of get around it. So, you know, how do we get more people to, I guess, not even get fooled by some of these like obvious scammers too? I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of Bitcoin not having, Satoshi as like an actual face, facing the public and doing all that kind of stuff. So, how do you, I guess, when you're orange pilling people or kind of bringing them on or talking to them about Satoshi and they're asking a lot of questions, do you find it that it's like almost a mental barrier that they don't know the CEO? Because that's something that I've kind of found is like they're like, well, how should I trust this person? And then I'm pointing to people like Do Kwon and Mashinsky, be like, wait, you trusted these people, and like look at what they're doing. So, are you kind of finding that where it's like the same kind of deal where that they're just, I guess, a little sketched out because nobody knows who Satoshi is?
Yeah, well, especially if they're not like a cryptographer or know anything about GitHub or, stuff like that. I mean, personally, I don't know too much about it, but I can at least, go to the Bitcoin core code and be like, hey, look, like, you want to audit this? It's right here, right? Like, why do you need a CEO to tell you or to trust when you can literally trust this impenetrable, immutable code that's right in front of you, right? So I try and go that route. I also ask, hey, like, do you know anything about, cryptography? Like, do you know what like hashing is, stuff like that? Maybe just like these little key points that they can learn so they can, trust it a little more, right? And kind of understand what's behind the hood or under the hood rather than just, saying, yeah, there's no CEO. Why would I trust this thing, right? So there's a lot of things you could point to. I like to kind of educate and show them, yeah, the Bitcoin core code and talk about hashing, stuff like that to hopefully get them in that learning situation rather than just trusting, I guess. But yeah, for the Do Kwon thing's just hilarious. I did mix up Anchor's 20% yield with Celsius's yield earlier, so that's my bad. But yes, we were talking about yeah, Anchor and Do Kwon. That was also just a same thing as Celsius, right? Massive red flags going off, like I was explaining earlier. Just ridiculous yields that are not sustainable, and and people are like, oh well, like how did it fail? Like can we do better? Can we make a algorithmic stablecoin better than this? I'm like, probably not. You're going to run into the same problems, right? Like yield is a classic legacy thing that is, dealing with like cash flow businesses, right? Like an oil company or a bank has like a 4% yield because they make money, right? They sell their oil, they do banking services and make provide you a service or give you an actual product. Whereas like Luna is literally just a coin that someone made that's everyone's shilling, and once that liquidity dries up, that's it, right? And I don't know, I think people are just still stuck in this whole legacy yield system, and it's the classic Keynesian issue, right? Like people don't realize if you have a fixed supply token and more people adopt it, that token will or coin will rise in value. You don't need to increase the supply to increase the value of each coin, right? And you got to, I don't know, you'd have to read a Keynesian versus Austrian economics book to like get them to realize that. But obviously a 5-minute conversation on a bus or like at a party is definitely not going to explain all this stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a journey for everyone, but you can lead them in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of these Ponzi's now have kind of maybe gotten some people either their guard up when it comes to Bitcoin and maybe other cryptos,
Mm-hmm.
or they're wondering why others work, and I think they're starting to question, I guess, the status quo maybe is what I would call it in the crypto space, and I think that that needs to continue, and I hope that it will, because if it does, we'll have less and less of these scams. But I think like the barrier to entry and just some of this stuff and the amount of money that can be made is just, there's too much human greed out there for this to be stopped, unfortunately. And we're seeing like a lot of, we'll see a lot of I guess Luna and some other Ponzi schemes, but I'm hoping not to that extent. And I hope these, like, these CEOs are, that people are seeing that they're just going to take your money and run, and that eventually, hopefully, there's some way that Do Kwon and some of these other people will get justice served to them, because they've essentially just scammed a bunch of people. And I think, as much as I hate regulation, and I don't think that like regulation is good for Bitcoin, I think
Mm-hmm.
like these companies around Bitcoin and crypto need to have some sort of regulation or something like around it to at least keep track of, maybe like a proof of funds or something like that. Because yeah, like you said, there's so much like IOU Bitcoin out there that at the end of the day, like, these companies aren't going to be the ones that get screwed, right? They can file
Mhm.
bankruptcy, they can do all this other stuff. And people will donate money or not donate, invest money, angel investments, whatever. They can fool a couple people with maybe a lot of money to help fund everything. But at the end of the day, the retail guy is probably the guy that gets hurt the most because they have, maybe some people have significant portions of their net worth in there. And so, do you think that because of situations like this, there's going to be more regulations that kind of come down on companies surrounding Bitcoin and crypto? And, do you think because of these scenarios that these regulations are not going to be super friendly, I guess, going forward?
Yeah, I think what you said about I would say shareholders getting burnt or retail is very true. Even in stocks, right? The early investors or the quote unquote pre miners, they don't uh, they don't get burnt, right? They basically sell the tops, buy the bottoms, buy backs here, selling there. So they don't get burnt. It's mostly retail, and yeah, I agree. For regulation, I think there's a point where I'm the same way. I don't. I like free market. I'm not regulate everything kind of guy. But stocks are regulated and they need to be accountable, and they're all insured and whatnot. And crypto is just like the wild wild west. And so I think a lot of stock traders or Wall Street guys are saying, hey, like, what the heck? Like, why is stocks regulated but crypto's not, right? So we just need to have like a nice flat standard for everything, and that's kind of where the regulation comes in. Um, yeah, and I hate picking winners and losers, but I do think to a certain extent regulation is good because then that gives clarity to big whales and big companies that want to buy in but aren't sure about buying in because it's still unregulated. So it's a there's pros and cons, right? I mean, you can regulate and then you get more whales and more number go up, but at the same time, as long as we kind of stay in this lull, we're in a bear market, people don't really care as much of Bitcoin as maybe you or I. That gives us a great opportunity to stack. So I am definitely not advocating for regulation, but if we want to see more adoption globally, I think that's a step that we're going to have to take, and we're going to have to confront at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you there too. And it's going to be a step. When that step happens or when that step occurs, I'm not sure what we can really predict any of that. But
Mhm.
there are a lot of positives going around in the space, although of these two previous negatives. For example, Strike. For those who don't know, Strike's obviously a Bitcoin Lightning Network payment app, I would say. I guess it's helping with to revolutionize the process or the payment system and payment rails for larger merchants, marketplaces, and financial institutions. Their CEO Jack Mallers is extremely popular in the Bitcoin space, and they recently raised $80 million in a funding round led by 1031 and joined by some interesting characters. They had Wash U in St. Louis and the University of Wyoming also participate in there. So looks like some legacy financial systems or legacy education systems kind of getting in with the development there as
Mhm.
well. So, what do you think of, I guess, everything that Strike has kind of, done and said they're going to do lately, and then obviously raising a bunch of money to continue to grow is a positive sign. But what are your thoughts on Strike and what they've been doing for the Bitcoin space?
Sure. I think they're a great company. Plain and simple. I wish they would come to Canada, but we don't have Strike in Canada yet. But I'm sure they'll figure that out soon. Yeah, I think they're a cross border, cross payment platform. They do kind of deal in USD, right? Like everything's kind of priced in USD. They offer Bitcoin Lightning payments. That's awesome. They are offering hopefully coming soon with their partnership with NCR and like kind of like the McDonald's, Starbucks of the world, where you can pay in Bitcoin. I think once that finally is set in place, then that would be awesome. And I would happily buy McDonald's with Bitcoin and kind of do the spend and replace method, where at least I'm buying stuff with it and using it and circulating it, and so that's definitely a step in the right direction. But long term, hopefully people can just use Lightning. That'd be great. They are still a centralized custodial service, right? That you're giving your keys to them, so just kind of be aware of that. But yeah, for groceries, for gas, for daily bills, stuff like that, that'd be awesome if we could use Bitcoin to pay for it. So I think what they're doing is awesome. It's great. I would just be careful with maybe them growing a little too big, going corporate, the usual thing where startup sounds great and then it turns into a really corrupt terrible company. Not saying that they will, obviously. I'm just saying maybe be wary of that and watch for it, because I think some guy that I know personally, he was trying to apply for a job there, and everything on their back end is in USD. It's not in Bitcoin, right? I mean, I get it because you need to tie things to the real world, but I wonder how that's gonna change moving forward, or what they're gonna do. But yeah, they seem like a great company. I love Jack; he's a cool guy. Hopefully, they can come back, or not come back, but come to Canada, and hopefully they can fulfill those promises that they made. Obviously they have some pushback, and they have to deal with a lot of regulatory stuff. So I get it. It's things don't just happen overnight. They've probably been working on these things for years. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what the future holds for that company.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you there. I mean, I think that overall they're great for the space. I do have Strike, but to be honest, I don't really use it too often. I find like it is
Mm,
easier to kind of send dollars than it is to send Bitcoin. So I mean, I think it's more
okay.
of a just like a lightning app, so to speak, with dollars. And I think it really encourages the use of that, which is fine and dandy, but you can't even really send a lightning invoice, or
Mm,
receive Bitcoin on your Strike app, and they make it like a little bit more difficult than send and receive dollars. So I mean, if there's a critique on that, that would be my biggest one. And on the flip side too, I don't really like how they're partnering with Visa to make a debit card either. And
right.
we've had Jack kind of come up in Bitcoin 2022 and say, Visa and MasterCard, these are two criminal companies. They charge this fee and everything like that. And then now they're partnering with them. And so, I think that this raise is good. Hopefully they can come up, they can use this money to develop a lot of things that they've said they're going to do. But, I've seen a lot of things out of Strike lately that have kind of made me question about where they're going. And I think like,
Mm,
this raise is it's not really one of them. It's just, at the same time where like they made all these promises on what they're going to do. Like you said, making it the ability to pay in Bitcoin at, say a Walmart or something like that. We're still kind of waiting for that. And then they also partnered with Visa, who they kind of got up and went and ripped apart the legacy financial system. So I think, for me, I'm hoping that this money will allow them to kind of, I guess, build towards those payment rails on, just general stores like a McDonald's or a Walmart or whatever. And, I hope that they kind of move away from the Visa card, to be honest, and kind of develop their own sort of card. But, I don't know if that's going to happen. And it doesn't really seem like that's a way that it's trending. And it's kind of bringing Visa into the Bitcoin space. And I don't know. I think that's, obviously good for Visa, but I don't know if it's really good for Strike and necessarily the entire Bitcoin ecosystem.
yeah, welcome to corporate, right? It's hard, right? You want to raise a bunch of money, but then the people that are raising the money or giving you the money have requests, or they have suggestions, and you took my money, so I want this, or stuff like that, right? It's just that's how the world works right now, unfortunately. And yeah, so we'll see. I think people are really trying to push or at least try and get Bitcoin into the legacy system, right? We don't want to change much. We kind of just want to integrate and then, have that peaceful transition. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that company deals with that going forward. But again, I am critical, just like yourself, but I don't want to judge before, um, you know, seeing something come to fruition. So we'll have to continue that on another time when they have some more stuff coming out that's out
Yeah,
rather
for
than coming
sure.
soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully it comes out soon. But I mean, you made a point there that I kind of want to dive into a little bit as well. But you
sure.
said about the big kind of integrating Bitcoin into the legacy financial system.
Mhm.
How do you, I guess, see all this playing out? Do you see it being kind of almost like a smooth transition where it moves into Bitcoin into, I guess, maybe using it as the Lightning Network to kind of, encourage the use of dollars at first and then eventually get to Bitcoin? Or do you kind of see it as like a quick, bloody, transition where a lot of these fiat currencies are just failing across the world, and then, they have no other choice and they kind of move over to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I would like to see it be peaceful, but I don't know if we're going to be so lucky. It just depends on the time horizon and how fast the legacy system continues to crumble, right? I mean, people are screaming about yields right now on treasury bills just going astronomically high. And, was it the British pound or something that's just dumping right now? Right? And you're like, man, like, what a time to have Bitcoin. But yeah, it's going to be tricky. I really hope it's a smooth transition. I think like I said, what Strike's doing, trying to integrate, maybe not with Visa, but I guess that's what they're doing. It will be a little smoother for now, I guess. I think like maybe even just contracts in general will start integrating Bitcoin as like a hedge, right? It's like you want to pay for a house, okay, you put 1% in Bitcoin and 99% in dollars. Or you want a cell phone bill, you pay 1% in Bitcoin and 99% in dollars. And I think over time, people are just going to start using and trusting Bitcoin more than dollars. So then it's going to be like, oh, 5% in Bitcoin and 95% in whatever currency. And that's going to be 10%, 20%. And then we're just going to be like, well, we're just going to be using Bitcoin for payment and everything, and all of our contracts and whatnot. So, yeah, like I said, I would love to see a smooth transition. I think at some point it's going to be, and then they fight you, right? Like that classic line. Whether that comes from people in general on the ground saying, "Oh, it's a scam," or whether that's through politics, because Bitcoin's apolitical, but it seems to be right now, especially in Canada, it's very right winged, right side oriented, because of the whole ESG FUD and all that. That's a whole nother thing. So there's a lot of battles that are gonna, it's not one big battle, but it's small things here, small things there. Trying to get over those hurdles and educate people so that they're not just listening to politicians that have no clue about Bitcoin or anything. Right? They're just talking out of their ass. Like the other day, one of these Canadian politicians just said, "No, Bitcoin's not going to be the new currency. It's going to be like XRP." And we were like, what the heck? Like, this is like a popular politician in Canada vouching and shilling for a corrupt corporate coin that's basically a CBDC. And you're like, whoa, what's new, right? I mean, classic. So yeah, I think it, yeah, with CBDCs too, that's also another battle. And that one I don't think is going to be as pretty. But I think the main battle is going to be the paper Bitcoin versus the real Bitcoin, right? You're going to have so many people on Coinbase and Kraken and all these other exchanges in the future say, I want my Bitcoin. And then they're going to say, sorry, we can't give you your Bitcoin because it's only on our exchange. So I think there's going to be a lot of people, there's going to be a period of time where there's going to be a run on the banks, and you're either going to be holding Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, or you're going to be holding it on Coinbase and might not be as happy. So yeah, it's again, there's pros and cons. I could be a filthy rich tomorrow, but then everyone else suffers. It's like that Big Short movie. A lot of people are going to suffer. So don't be laughing, but hopefully we are better for it afterwards.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I don't know. From my perspective, I think whether it's the CBDCs or something else, there's going to be some way to try to get around, not necessarily using Bitcoin. And I think eventually it's going to be kind of a bloody transition for those that don't really embrace it. I think it's going to be kind of
Sure.
similar to what we've seen now, right? Where like some countries prosper and do really well while others suffer majorly. And
Yeah.
so, hopefully you're in a country that is more open to it and they, transition over and everything's not going to be smooth sailing, but if the earlier they transition, the earlier they can get, you know, go through some of those bumps in the roads and other things like that. And I
Yeah.
still think, there's a lot of fiat nonsense going on, like for example, the Bank of England right now essentially said they're going to go through endless QE to buy UK bonds.
Right.
So, it's like, when are these banks and countries going to learn? And for those who don't know, QE, in layman's terms, I guess, is just like money printing. And now the Bank of England is going to buy UK bonds, which is essentially governmental debt, in order to do that. So they're going to be printing money out of thin air after we're seeing these massive amounts of inflation and other things like that. And do you think like pointing to something like this kind of helps make the case for I guess a Bitcoin? Or do you think like people are still kind of getting around to the fact where like, hey, I maybe they get another stimulus check or something like that, and they're like, hey, this helps in the short term with inflation, and inflation is caused by all these other geopolitical events like Russia and invading
Mhm.
Ukraine and all this and that. And so they still kind of take the government side? Or do you think like we're starting to get to the point now where everybody's just, calling out the bullshit that is that is going on around here?
Yeah, I mean, for the people that are awake, we're calling out the bullshit. For all the people that are still asleep and in the matrix, they love handouts, man. Like, they're like, let's fix inflation by giving everyone another $1,000 or $2,000 stimmy check. It's like, that's not going to help. That's going to make it worse. Like, let's fix inflation by adding more money. That's like, the memes write themselves, man. It's insane. But yeah, I think, like I said, for the people that are awake, I think this is kind of like, all right, listen, like things are getting wild, shit is hitting the fan. You better be prepared, right? And then other people are like, oh yes, please give me more stimulus. So yeah, QE is great for all risk on assets, including Bitcoin. So if I think the big catalyst will be if the U.S. starts QE, right? I mean, everyone is looking at the Fed right now, like it's like Jay Powell is like the Jesus of today's world right now, right? That guy speaks, and Bitcoin and every other asset, stock, everything just goes like this. It's just insane. I mean, that's mainly because of algorithms and stuff like that. But man, that guy has way too much power. To quote Kanye, right? No man should have all that power. Um, so yeah, it's not a good thing. I don't like QE. I don't like QT. That's just using leverage to benefit themselves. But going back to kind of like the distribution thing, right? Like Bitcoin's only 13 years old, so the faster it gets adopted, the more of a like um, you'll have like your higher class and like middle class and lower class. Like that separation is going to be a lot bigger. Whereas like if we wait like another 10 years, 20 years and like let people kind of get into it, hopefully before all the corporations just buy up all the Bitcoin, I think that's a net positive. Um, so it will help with wealth disparity. But ultimately Bitcoin is, don't get poor over time, right? It's just to save your wealth. Whereas like, yeah, QE is basically just seeping wealth from your bank account every day because you don't see it, but you see it in prices going up. So yeah, it's a tricky balance, but hopefully we can get through it without too much suffering.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like there's getting a lot more notice on it. Like people are starting to wake up, and maybe it's just because of the echo chamber that I'm on in Bitcoin Twitter or what. And I mean, I'm seeing like even like Bukele, Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, he's even tweeting publicly at some of these banks and going off on them. And I had Jaime on last week, and we went into the
Mm,
details of all the positives that have kind of gone on around Bitcoin and El Salvador since Bukele has been elected. But like it's incredible, right? We've seen presidents and like the former United States president Trump get banned on Twitter, and now we're seeing
mhm.
Bukele kind of going at big institutions publicly. And luckily he hasn't been banned or essentially censored or anything like that. But I think it's super interesting now where we're seeing like global figures having the access or the ability to essentially almost like troll other institutions and things like that. So do you think, like him doing this, do you think that it'll come off like somewhat positively and people will look into it? Or do
Mm.
you think like it'll just kind of keep the same opinion that people had of him, where it's almost like, a Trump kind of thing, right? Where no matter what he tweets or says or something, it's the worst.
Yeah, I think you can talk the talk, but it's another thing to walk the walk, right? I don't think we'll actually see how adopting Bitcoin benefits their country for another 5, 10 years, right? But when that happens in 10 years, and their entire country is 20x wealthier because of his decision, I think people will realize, oh my gosh, I got to start doing this. Right, I got to get some Bitcoin for myself. But as for like social media and stuff like that, even now there's so many hit pieces on things they don't like, right? Like, I don't know. I think they're blaming Russia for this whole oil pipeline thing that blew up, and it was like, wasn't it like Russia's pipeline or something? So it was like, why would they do that to themselves? And it was, it's just like, so they will try and twist and turn and manipulate as much as possible, as they've been doing for many, many years. It's not new. COVID, I think, really woke people up. Just kind of, seeing through that fake media, right? Like people were, saying about all these deaths from COVID, and you need to get your vaccine, and then it turns out the vaccine wasn't actually that good, and it might not be healthy and safe and effective. And so yeah, they're just going to do whatever they can to push their narrative, and they really don't. I don't think they really like him because of what he's doing. Right? Um, the IMF wants to give them money so that they can control that country. They're not like when the IMF loans money to a poor country, they're not expecting that money back. They're basically just going to, use that as leverage to control that country or whatnot. So yep, they're going to manipulate all they want. They're gonna fight, fight, fight. They're going to go down with the ship. I think they're definitely not going to be letting go anytime soon. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think, yeah, you're right on there. Like, he's there. These people are going to go down with the ship. They're going to continue to kind of, I guess, double down in there. But I think, Bukele challenging the IMF and essentially, giving the double bird and saying fuck you to them and doing this whole move with Bitcoin is, the best thing that he could have done for El Salvador to get out of where they're at. Like you said, I think it's going to be a few years until like we'll see the extent of the positives. But I mean, I think just from, the initial positives, right? You're seeing tourism and a lot of other things go up dramatically. And I think like, we're sitting here on a podcast talking about El Salvador. I had a full podcast on them, on El Salvador last week. And, multiple people now, are aware of El Salvador and all this and that, and maybe have desires to travel there. And that's all because of the publicity that Bitcoin has given them. And so I think, once they get this volcano bonds kind of established, they start mining in their own country and doing all this stuff. That it's just going to be more positives overall for the
Mhm.
economy. And I'm extremely bullish on El Salvador going forward. So I hope that continues. And things like that as well. So, but on the last note, like like we've mentioned a couple times during this podcast, we are in a bear market, and in bear markets, it seems to always affect a company in some way, shape, or form. So we've had the crypto mining data center Compute North is another one that has now filed for bankruptcy. It's said that they've owned about as much as 500 million to at least 200 different creditors. And what I think is super interesting about this is they announced a Series C raise in February, so just 7 months ago, that they
Wow.
raised $285 million. And its biggest partner is Marathon Digital. And it does have some other partners that are big players in the Bitcoin mining space. So, it seems like a lot of these Bitcoin miners have kind of gotten hit pretty hard when it comes to it's just this bear market in general. Obviously, Compute North deals with a lot of shitcoins as well and shitcoin mining, but at the end of the day, Bitcoin mining is probably the biggest player. So how do you think like some of these Bitcoin miners are going to start preparing for one, the next halving, and two, the next bear market? Like,
Mm.
do you think technology is going to be able to keep up, or is maybe I guess the end of the at home retail miner going to end here shortly, where things become more costly to mine, and it only makes sense to do it at a greater scale.
Yeah, the at home stuff is a little tricky right now because of all that energy stuff going on. Yeah, it's hard to comment on that one. I wish it would be nicer to mine at home. I mean, even myself, I host my miner, which is probably like the worst idea in the world, and it's definitely bitten me in the ass. But it's the only way that I can mine without like dumping money down the toilet, right? Um, so I think it will become more industrialized, but man, these companies are just like, I don't know, are they dumb? Like it's like top 60K plus. It's like the miners are still accumulating. They're not selling. They're not selling. And then it's like, yeah, we're at 20K. It's like, oh, miners going bankrupt. I'm like, what? Like, do you guys not plan like years ahead? Like, there are companies that put up a apartment complex, and they're like their ROI is like 20 years, right? And they put all the upfront costs. So I don't understand why these Bitcoin or crypto mining companies, I don't know if they're just like leveraging up. They're just buying a crap ton of hardware, expecting it to continue to rise. Like, I don't know. It's just it seems like every bear market this happens, which is so odd. Like, I don't like you'd think they'd learn, right? At least like sell enough so that you can afford maybe 3 months, or sorry, not 3 months, like the next 2-3 years worth of electrical costs, or have like a fixed energy rate for a certain amount of years. So at least you like are planning ahead. It just seems like some of these companies are not planning ahead, and it is quite unfortunate. And obviously you can't predict the market, but come on, like you got to be at least a little bit smart here, and know when to kind of lay off the gas, and when the price per terahash is too high, and when it's a good time to buy, right? I mean, miners were going for like 10K for an S19 at one point, and now they're at like 3-4K. So obviously there's better times to buy miners, and least favorable times to buy miners. But you'd think on like on a scale of gigawatts, or these massive warehouses, you'd think that they would plan ahead, but it just doesn't seem like they're doing that. So I think this market, or this bear market, is a little bit different so far because we haven't seen like a minor capitulation yet. I don't know if we'll hit it. I don't know. I hopefully think that these at least companies are getting a little smarter, so they, like I said, they have some expenses for at least the next year or two, without going bankrupt. But we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, do you think a big part of it kind of plays into maybe a lot of these CEOs at being their first, that they found Bitcoin and then they kind of created a company, so it was like their first time almost running a company, and then on another note, it's the first time like major companies like this are dealing with an asset, or commodity, or whatever you want to call Bitcoin, as volatile as Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. I think there are a lot of newbies to the space. They like some of these hosted services. They run their own mine, and then they just have like a whole wall of racks for like hosted miners. And maybe they had a good setup for 6 miners, but for say 60 miners, they have terrible airflow. There's like snow coming in through their vents in the winter, or it's like the dead of August, and it's like they're in Texas and didn't realize how hot it gets or something, and they're just blowing hot air through their miners and just melting these chips. Like, I don't know, it's just it's so funny to like, it's just crazy. It's like, oh, we weren't prepared for the heat. And you're like, it gets this hot every fucking year. Like, what do you mean you were prepared for the heat? Like, do you not know it? And it goes from spring to summer, summer to fall. This is a very common thing. What do you mean? So I definitely think there's a lot of amateurs out there that we didn't realize. And I guess we just maybe overestimated, um, you know, the preparedness of these companies, I guess. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's not easy to run a company, and then especially a company where you're just kind of starting off, and it goes through these almost like 4-year cycles in Bitcoin. So you have to be prepared for another downturn almost immediately as soon as you get out of one. So
Yeah.
hopefully, I think a lot of these companies are going to start learning, and it'll just bring more and better run companies out on the other side. And hopefully that, like I said, they're more prepared coming up for the next bear market, whenever that may be. So and on that note, D, you've been very generous with your time today. I know we did a little bit earlier in the afternoon, so for those that made it out in the chat, I really appreciate it. But D, why don't you tell everybody what you got going on and where they can find you?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it. Thanks for moving up the time. I know we were both a little busy later tonight, so thanks again. And you've been an awesome host. Look forward to hopefully doing this again. You can find me on Twitter. My name's HODLD, and I work for CoinKite. If you're looking for help or education, just shoot us an email at support@coinkite.com. I'm happy to help you out, whether it's product related or even just Bitcoin related. Happy to help. Yeah, so looking forward to hopefully going to some more conferences in the future and meeting up with my boy Brandon here. Obviously, Texas was great. Loved hanging out with you, man. And yeah, look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, man, for sure. We definitely got to get to another conference. And then maybe when you guys do that Canadian Bitcoiners conference, or whenever
Oh
that
yeah,
is, or Bitcoin Canada, or whatever they're going to call it, maybe
yeah,
I'll make an appearance up there, as
sure,
long as
man.
I'm not like maybe on that wanted list for donating to the convoy or something like that. But anyway,
Sounds good.
yeah, maybe I'll make it up to the Great White North. So D, thanks so much. And yeah, hopefully we could connect again soon.
Absolutely, man. Cheers. Take care.